This episode is brought to you by the RVA Podcast Network. Find more information at rvapodcast.org.
We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such.
Are you serious? Like, we at season 7, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. Yeah, season 7. Magic number. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna go in depth with that, but yeah, this will be a very positive season. I don't know why and what's making me say that, but everything's changed. Everything is a lot different. I know the title you'll still see the podcast about sports and stuff, but yeah, I ain't gonna get no sports. I'm still, like I said, stuff is very fluctuating now. I found that the connection with things is to get people to talk, as well as me taking time to talk. So you'll notice it, especially when you hear the first few episodes of this season. But it's just about sitting down and just having good talk, good conversation. Pass the message. Y'all know they ain't going nowhere. If you know, you know. If you've been around for a while, you already know how we give it up. But just hang in there. The content's amazing. The moves are even more amazing. And just put yourself in the right headspace to get this information. So hope y'all enjoy. What's going on, y'all? Episode 368 of The Pass is here. I'm your host, BT. I will not waste any time. I've promised quite a few people that I would do this episode. This is not going to be one of your typical episodes. This may be boring to some, but this will be fun to others because a lot of people who know me on a personal level know that I have a very near and dear love or a keen passion for ink pens or collecting pens. Now, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. When I say pens, I'm not talking about those pens that you get from the doctor's office. I'm not talking about the ones that have the different medications on them. Those are all going to run as your traditional ballpoint pens. Those are great pens, but those are not going to be the pens that we're going to have in this bout. And I'm calling it a bout because this is one of those things where, because I'm always in a mood of like, I need a pen for what I'm working on, I have different pens for different purposes. And you'll understand what I mean as we go through this. Now, I will warn you, this podcast will be a little, when I say a little, like very mild ASMR-ish. Oh, that's why I didn't have that up. So maybe I may be a little louder, but this will be a little more freestyle, a little more fun, to say the least. And what I mean by that is you will hear me kind of going between pens, kind of doing like a full writing. And what I'll be basically writing, so I have a legal pad that if anyone has or has not made this a habit, always keep a legal pad with you. Just a simple legal pad, yellow pages, whatever. Only because it could be a moment that you may need to write something down and you want to be prepared for that. If not, for pocket purposes, I always tell people to get the little small notebooks, the Moleskines, or if you're on a more inexpensive route, even though it's not going to be the best quality, Dollar General, they have the notepads that are like $1, and the ink pens you can get like a 4-pack, I think, for like $1. So I always recommend those, but not talking about the pens or the notebooks. I mainly, like I said, have a legal pad. I will basically be writing my name in with each pen, and I'm going to go through the different types of pens and kind of give the brief yet loaded backstory behind the different pens and when you'll likely be using these different pens. So I want to be sure that you're coming into this very open-minded and very aware of how this all is going to play out. Now, anyone who is a pen user people who use pens just kind of like write stuff down and they're casual users. you'll understand a little bit of this, but it's gonna make more sense as you start to purchase more ink pens or own more pens down the line. And why I'm sharing it or giving it in that tone or in that vein is because certain pens benefit you in certain aspects. What do you mean by that, Brian? Well, first and foremost, as many of you have heard me talk about before, I believe I did a full podcast on the Rocket Book and my new passion for that. So I have a 3-pack of Rocket pens, like Rocket pen approved ink pens that I'll be putting to the test with this as well. I'm kind of going to do them those are going to be put to a double test. They'll be put to a test on the legal pad. And I also have a Rocket Book small notepad with me as well. So I'll be using that for those. A certain thinness of a pen is going to be important for what you're writing, but it's also going to be an impact on when you're using said pen, that ink will have a tendency to run out a lot faster. And I know you're probably thinking, well, wouldn't you think that the pens that have like the higher numbers are going to be run out the quickest? And it's like, not necessarily, only because it all comes down to the user and how frequently you use the ink pens. If you're listening to the podcast, as you listen to it, you're gonna see the actual. You'll see an actual image of all of the pens that will be in this match. One of the pens you will see, but you won't physically see. It'll be in a little case. And I'm going to talk about that case as well, because I ended up getting like another case similar, which I'll get into that in a bit. But we're not going to, I know I'm doing like a huge build up, but I want to make sure I give everyone kind of the full playbook or the full understanding of what we're going into before we get started. So first up, and I will go ahead and be clear, I would say at least 75% of the pens on the table, let's see, 3, 8, 10, 13, 16. So 5, 8. Yeah, so a little more than 50% of the table will consist of palette pens. So I've been a palette G2 user for quite some time. I got introduced to a couple newer pilots in the last few years, and I have those. I have one that I'm going to use that's not in the normal G2 category. That's gonna be put in this pen war, and a couple of the other pilots will go with the Rocket Book. Like I said, I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of information in there, but I want to make sure I give you all the context before we get this going. So first up, we're gonna start with the Pilot G2, and we're gonna start from lowest to highest. And when I say lowest, I mean the thickness or the point itself as far as the pen. So the lowest one is going to be the 0.38, which I personally have found this to be a pen that I love using whenever I'm writing, either in my bullet journal, predominantly in my bullet journal. I've used it a couple times for just regular journaling, but it doesn't do it. If you want something that's really going to fill pages, you may want something a little bit more thicker, maybe a 0.5, maybe a 1.0, but I would say 0.5, maybe a 0.7 is kind of like your safe zone. That's the ones that you're typically going to see. And how I actually will break this down is a lot of these are going to be these are what you see in the stores like Target, CVS, Walgreens, Staples, Office Depot, stuff like that. So first up, 0.38, and all of these pens are gel-based pens. So I want to be sure I get that out the way now as I'm writing. Yeah, this one, like I said, the G2, man, is kind of you already know. If you know, you know. Like it writes real smooth. Anytime I'm using it for planning, when I do reflections, when I'm just kind of writing out different notes, it's very good with writing. It gives you a good amount of space for writing on pages. So I do like the flow and the fluidity and or writing style of the 0.38. Next up, we have the 0.5. 0.5, like I said, is a more traditional pen that you'll see a lot of people purchase. And yeah, like I said, the G2.5, I literally don't complain too much about this pen. Like this is one that if I'm not in I need to really go like extra fine. To kind of break it down, there's extra fine, fine, and then I believe I know the 1.0 is like bold. And then there's like, because it's like if I had the actual normally I would have breakdowns of each one right in front of me, but I usually just break it down by the numbers. The numbers will tell you the depth of the pen. And another way to look at this is anyone who purchases or uses mechanical pencils, if you know about the 0.5, the 0.7, you'll see a couple of people that will have 0.9. You rarely will see a 1. If you're getting any pencils that are darker, it becomes more like in the art category. So just to kind of give you a context or understanding of that. Next up, the regular smuggler, he or she's been here before. The G2.7, probably one of the smoothest pens that most people don't find themselves complaining about or not. I've never really heard anybody be displeased when they have a G2.7. Now, I recently got introduced or realized that there was a 1.0 G2, so I had to pick up a few to try them out. The one obvious pro, the flow of writing is very smooth. It's quick. The trade-off is that it's because it's the boldest pen of all. It is it's a loud pen. So if you write with it, it's not a pen I would use to sign documents, put it that way. I'm putting this one in the mix, but it's not really a pen that I have it in my bag as a regular available pen, but I don't go to it that often. It is the G27, but it's the limited. I'm only using this for the sake of the actual casing. The casing of it is probably one of the more higher ends. This is a pen that you will see in stores, but it's not really, it doesn't get pushed as much. It's a little bit on the pricey side, but you're getting it for the exclusivity, obviously. So yeah, that's my quick breakdown on those 5. Like I said, putting them in order. The 0.3, I've accepted that I'm a needlepoint writer, so I like pens that have an extra fine tip pause. All pauses will be covered. We're not going to even try to do that for the rest of this podcast. But the 0.38 is probably going to be my first. Then I would say the 0.7, then the 0.5, then the 1.0 would probably be like in that on the back end, and then the G2 Limited. G2 Limited I have with me, but I don't even have it where I carry it in my bullet journal. Like I have a container that I keep my bullet journal, my regular journal, and all of my pens in. So it doesn't go in that container. Like it doesn't. I don't carry it in that accessory. That's kind of like the separation and comparison to kind of give an idea. So that is the G2 family, rocked out and knocked out. Now we're gonna do the Pilot Friction. Now the Pilot Friction, as I've mentioned on the show before, is part of the Rocketbook pen collaboration. So if you buy a Rocketbook notebook, you're likely going to, and this is an eye-opening thing. So I'm going to give you all a tip that many people do not know. And I had not thought about this or realized it until I started to get more of these notebooks. When you buy a Rocketbook notebook, it comes with a pen, but knowing where the pen is located is when you get surprised, because it's at the bottom of the actual casing for the pen. For the box. The only difference is going to be if you have the smaller notebook, it's on the side because of the height. The height of the notebook itself is literally the same as the actual pen that will come with it. And when you buy it, they give you the 0.7. And it's funny because when I bought my first Rocketbook, I bought like a 3-pack of 0.7s. And I was like, I really didn't need to buy these 0.7s because it already came with us 0.7. So, like I said, I'm going to do this twice. We're going to start with the 0.38, which I found on jetpens.com. I will be sure to put, and for all of these pens, I will put links for each of the pens. I'm going to utilize JetPens as my resource to kind of give you the links for each one. So it may make the show notes a little longer. I don't know. but we're going to start with the 0.38. I was a little hesitant or frustrated with getting this one because it was supposed to arrive at a certain time and it didn't arrive. And I was like, well, where's my pen and what's going on? This is going to be out of all of the friction pens, this one is going to be the smallest. It does not have much wiggle room on length for the actual pen. Sorry for the background noise. I'll clean that up. Y'all know how I do. But yeah, that's the 0.38. Not a bad pen. It is not bullet. I would not use this as a bullet journal pen. That's just a regular. You need something to write with in your bullet journal. In your Rocket book, and it will get the writing done with no problem. Next on the list, getting a little, the fineness expands a little bit with the 0.5. When I found out and realized that they had the 0.5 in stock, I was like, I need this. I'm going to go ahead and get a pack of these. And I don't have any regrets on it. Like I said, Rocket book wise, great pen. Bullet journal, legal pad, I wouldn't even waste my time. Next up, the 0.7. Again, like this is the one that comes with most of the books. This one will write the best in a Rocket book notebook, and it is a reason that it comes with the actual packaging, but also it's not a bad, hey, if I need a pen real quick and I don't have one, you can always use it. I would use this one over the other two. I did not purchase the 1.0. I'm doing a lot of research on it. I didn't see a benefit of getting the 1.0 pen. So I didn't get that one, but I think if I had gotten it, I probably would have that like at the tail end. But as far as ranking goes, I would say this one is going to be a little different. I would say the 0.7 is first. Then I would say the 0.3, very close, like very close. And then I would put the 0.5 as the third in that category. Like I said, I'm not putting the 1.0 in there because I don't have that actual pen, so I'm not going to use it. So like I said, I'm not doing any more with the actual Rocket book, but now we're just going to do some general writing with, now these two, I'm not going to really write with them together. I could kind of do the thing where, and it's funny, we did this as kids, we would get two pens and you'd see them and you're like, oh, let me see how this looks, and you write your name. I may add this as an added image of the for the podcast, but like writing with them at the same time. Writing with the tool pen, the tool needle point. This pen is like, this one kind of ping pongs between my bullet journal and between my regular journal, like frequently and often. Like I will get this pen out before I get any other pen. Like this is one of those, put it this way, the tool pen is one of those pens that when you give it to somebody, you're making sure that pen comes back to you. Because if it doesn't, we got problems. We got issues, and we definitely need to talk. This is a more pricier pen, but I still support them because they don't really do too bad with ink pens, and they're still in that ink pen family. The Zebra pen, and writing with it now, I might have to take my words back. Like just writing, kind of doing like a quick writing. It's a good flow in writing with it. It is now this is a ballpoint pen. It's a real simple point. It's a 0.7 millimeter pen, and all of the numbers that I'm giving you, 0.7, 0.5, 0.38. 1.0, that's in millimeters. Just want to make sure we're clear on that in regards to that particular type of pen. So yeah, the Zebra BP or F402, not like I said, not the worst pen, not the best pen, but it's a good pen overall. So I don't have like a bad ill will about the pen. Next up, OG Classic. You always, if you're buying these, and I tell people this, I'm not even being funny with what I'm about to say. You buy these pens in 6 or 12 packs. Like, I'm sorry, in a 4-pack or a 12-pack. Don't buy these single pens, because literally you will buy them, and if you use them enough times, by the time you have walked out the store, use it for a couple days, you're going to run out of ink and you need another pen. This is the Pilot Precise V5. They have the V5 and the V7. The V5 is extra fine, of course. The V7 is bold, and you'll literally see it written on the side of the pen, as well as you'll notice a difference in the color of the barrel for this particular pen. Last in this quote-unquote category, we're going to talk about the Uni Jetstream. I think this is the pen that started all of this. If I'm being 100% honest. I found this pen, or I was looking up pens, and I was like, all right, I need to look for like a needle pen or like a really thin point pen. And this is the first one that came up. So I definitely gravitated to it with no problem. It's very quick with writing, perfect for bullet journaling by far. Like, as you know, as you're hearing with the theme, a lot of these pens are usually in my caliber for the sake of me bullet journaling, not like anything extravagant or anything extreme. So I don't give them like this major push of like, oh, they have to be in this realm or in this category. But that's what I found them to be useful for. So yeah, with the Jetstream, it's a pretty nice pen. Like I said, it's a point. Now this is a 0.38. I needed to, at some point I'm going to get more refills for it because I used it when I was doing a study, like studying for some information a few weeks ago. And this pen is practically almost done. So I want to go ahead and beat that before it gets out of hand. So yeah, I want to make sure I put that one in the mix. So those are all of the, I call it Pilot to Uni Zebra, somewhat store pens that you're going to see on a day-to-day basis. Now, these last three that I'm going to do are you're going online searching for a pen to find these type of pens category. The first one that I'm going to do has been beneficial. And I'm gonna kind of tell the story backwards, but it'll make sense as to why I'm sharing it. I was looking at fountain pens and I was like, all right, I need to make sure I got a nice fountain pen. I've had a Parker fountain pen for some years. Never really did me wrong. I've had Lamy. Lamy is cool. Jinhao, Jinhao. Those are usually the good ones that you'll get from that'll come from overseas. You'll wait out the shipping, but they're usually worth the wait. Normally, for years, I've been doing fountain pens with cartridges. I broke away from cartridges and I started to do the accessory where you pretty much can keep the pen in keep the cartridge in the pen and just kind of add ink by just getting like an ink barrel. And it saved me a lot of money. Was way more useful. I don't find myself having to refill as often, and I like that feature alone. Why I'm sharing or giving this story is because when I first got this pen, I found this accessory online and I was like, this is probably one of the most creative accessories that I need. And it literally has written on both sides, no, you cannot borrow my pen. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge stickler when it comes to ink pens. So what makes this story relevant and so ironic is I bought this item. I want to say this specific pen that I'm going to talk about first. I put the pen inside this accessory and someone somehow was like at my desk and they're like, oh, your pen was sitting there and I used it. And I was like, it says on the container, no, you cannot borrow my pen. So you decided to write with it. And then when you wrote with it, you didn't understand why I didn't write or didn't come out the way that you wanted to, because not everyone knows how to use. No, not everyone is a fan of writing with fountain pens. And I 100% understand that. But there's a reason why people who have fountain pens use them. Like even me as a fountain pen owner, I'm still working harder on the craft and the understanding of doing calligraphy. Because I have yet to do calligraphy, but I've always talked about that as something that I've had a semi-unique passion of wanting to learn, not gonna lie. So I wanted to throw that in there as a quick story time. But this pen is the Cross fountain pen. It is a somewhat of a bold pen. Like I said, I've had this pen at least 3 or 4 years. It's the barrel of the pen. Like if you see the actual design of the pen, you would think I literally bought it like a couple days ago. Like I take very good care of this pen if no other pen gets any attention from And by the way, I didn't give the name, but the company who sells the No You Cannot Borrow My Pen, the name of that company is Rickshaw Bags. I will add their link in the show notes as well. I'm sharing it and talking about it because I was like, all right, I got a one pack. That's cool. But maybe I should get a 2-pack so that way I'll have one to hold that fountain pen and this other fountain pen that I just found, which is probably, this might be one of the more expensive pens that as far as what I've purchased. I spent over about $20 for it, a little bit more. I'm just putting that as a sweet spot. But the name of the company is called Twsbi, which is TWSBI. And it doesn't have cartridges. There is no refill like cartridge that you place in it. It basically has it where when you buy the pen, the top of it, you would twist to put it at its lowest point to add ink into it. And then you twist it the opposite direction to get ink to flow back into the pen. And once it's filled, you pretty much can go to town and just write as you normally would. And why I like this pen the most is because it is a extra fine fountain pen. And I don't really get too many extra fine fountain pens that I like, let alone extra fountain pens that last. This is one of the first ones that I've found that like really has lasted through quite a fair share of things. So, and also I like this pen because in order for you to open and close it, you have to twist. It's a twist open pen. It's a twist open pen opening, which I love that part of it alone. So that is the Twsbi pen. It is eco-friendly, based in Taiwan. I personally, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I gotta take a chance on it. That link may be Amazon based. I will check if they have it on JetPens. Perfect. If not, it is what it is. My final pen has a very funny story, but it's honest because it's just what it was at the time when it happened. The end of last year, I was in a space where I realized that I need to get back to what works, which even me saying it to you all on this podcast, I need to get back to what works. And what worked was doing bullet journaling. And so I went on Ryder Carroll's page, and I'm one of those people I've learned, and this is something that I personally do. I know I'm giving you all links for JetPens and different like other companies' links. I like to purchase items directly from the seller, so that way that the seller gets their money and it doesn't go through like the distribution and all this other stuff. Like whoever the product is for, they get their bread, which I'm all for at the end of the day. And sometimes it's not gonna always work out like that, which I don't really get myself up in arms about that, because realistically it's just not that deep. It'll never be that deep personally. I'm starting with that story because I purchased the bullet journal from Ryder Carroll's page. I found the blue notebook. I was like, yes, this is the one. I'm definitely going to dedicate myself. And it's only March and I'm at least almost a third of the book is full. So I'm trying to learn how to pace how I'm writing and tasking and not making that book my main source. That's why I'm using the Rocket Book more often with notating. But anyway, I bought the book. It arrived. I was like, all right, cool. I want to find like a pen, and I'm looking at these pens that I kept seeing this pen pop up on his page, and I'm like, it is a very expensive pen, but I like this brand. I like the style. I'm going to mispronounce this, and I believe I mispronounced it last time we talked about it. The notebooks that are used for bullet journaling and the pen are all in the same family brand, which is called Luxstrom 1917. They have been probably one of my favorite companies to get notebooks from. Now, like I told people before, and I've said this numerous times with those who think of or want to do bullet journaling, if you're starting off, do not go out and buy the traditional bullet journal. Buy just a simple dotted grid notebook
and start there to learn and get comfortable with bullet journaling first. And then if you think after a year, you know what, I'm ready, let me step it up a notch, then you get the real thing. And I still feel bad because I didn't realize it until it was too late, that there was one point when I was cleaning out my car and I believe that I threw out a couple of bullet journals that I had, because that was a big chapter and a big adjustment in my life and in my script, not knowing where things would take me now. So I don't regret it one bit in the transition with bullet journaling or coming back to bullet journaling. So that story time leads us here with the pen, which writer Carol made a pen specifically for the bullet journal. Now, why I like this pen the most is because other than the Friction 0.38, all of these pens are like your traditional pen where it has a clip. You can clip it on your pocket, clip it on your pants. In the notebook, it can be clipped on the notebook. This is the only one that is like, when I put it away, I have to make sure it's stored away and doesn't have the ability to possibly pop out or anything. I'm saying that because this pen has tried to do that a couple times. And it is a gel-based pen, but it's a very smooth gel base. It's a good gel-based pen, and it's a quick dry. And that's something that's important that I want to talk about with a lot of these pens too. Your biggest factor with using a certain pen is how quick it dries out. Because you don't want to use a pen and then it's the possibility or the potential that it could smear. Because then if it smears and you're sitting there like, well, I just wrote this down, and now the information that I just wrote down is gone. So what am I supposed to do? So a lot of these pens get separated in different categories and buckets because of how quick they are with drying, especially for those who are bullet journalists, as well as those, and I don't want to ignore or forget them, as well as for those who are left-handed, because if you're writing across, the worst thing you want to have happen is as you're writing, you have to write a certain way to lift your hand so that what you just wrote doesn't get erased. And that's why it's a big deal when it comes to the Friction notebook or the Friction pens in the Rocket book and making sure they collaborate. But all of that being said, Luxturn and Bullet Journal came together and made their version of the Drigraful, which I've talked about this pen before, but we're now talking about it for the sake of the writing topic. And I'm just here to tell you that I'm going to be sad when this pen runs out of ink, because I know I'm going to at least need to get 2 or 3 more refills. My dilemma with this pen, which is so small, is the particular style from the Bullet Journal, and it may be just me how I'm carrying it or its wear and tear, I guess it's gold plated, but the gold or the actual plating on the knob at the top, as well as the pen part of it that you write at the bottom, as you're writing, as you use it, it starts to fade, and but it gives it on the same token, it gives it a nostalgic feel or a nostalgic look. So it's still a win-win in the long run. It's just an adjustment because you're like, well, where is my setup? Or how did I have everything kind of come together like it did before? So just adjusting to that portion of it is probably like the smallest kink in the process, but it's still not a bad break against the pen. Like, the pen still is a good pen. Brief story with that, and then I'm going to give a pass the message, and we're going to wrap it up. When I first got this pen, and I stopped using these after I did this, there was an accessory, because I was like, I'm writing with this pen and I'm writing with it for a long period of time, which is not really intended for, by the way. But of course, when you're bullet journaling or when you're journaling, time goes, so you don't really think about it. But as I was writing with it, I was like, I need like a little holder or something to kind of put as like a rest, a way to rest my hand whenever I'm writing with it. So I went, I'm looking online, and I found, different companies had some products. And so I went to Walmart, or I found on Walmart that they had like these little rubber ones that you can just kind of put on, and it'll, the pen will sit in there and it works fine. So I put one on this pen and I put one on a Unijet, and I was using it. And I remember now I was using them for a certification that I was studying for, that I'm still planning to get that certification. And as I'm writing, I'm like, okay, this is definitely not a good thing to do by putting this on here. So I'm trying to take it off, and it was having a hard time coming off. And eventually, like because it had sat on the pen for so long, it eventually broke. And I was like, okay, these aren't meant for this accessory, and that's okay. So now I know that, and I will keep that in mind for future reference with this particular pen. So all of that to say, use it for its purpose. Give it a brief use accordingly, and then move forward with that usage. I got a little bit of time left. I'm not going, like I said, I have one other thing I'm going to share before I pass the message. It's ironic because I was on the verge of doing this podcast yesterday. I was supposed to do it yesterday. And I started to do the pod. I was here, had set up. I had reserved a room and everything. I was ready. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it in there, and I'm gonna, spend part of my time doing this, spend the other part of my time doing my session. And I had a tech haul, or I had a tech upgrade happen personally where I was like, all right, I'm ready to make some changes and get some things to kind of improve my setup. And so I did. And I'm now using a newer Mac. I don't have one of the latest and greatest. I personally don't see a need of buying a newer Mac like the current ones. I think they're great, but price wise and also durability wise, like I'm learning how this works now. With this one, it was just two accessories that I feel I needed. One of which is because I had it with my last computer. It's called the Fuse Reel. Fuse Reel is basically a device that allows you to kind of sidewind or reel your power cable together, so you're not just walking around with like random cable all over the place. Because I personally am not a big fan of that, but of course, each his own. And then the second accessory is a hub for not only being able to charge the laptop, but also being able to plug in any accessories that I need to, and leaving any ports open that I have to for whatever I need to. Because the computer has 4 USB Thunderbolt ports, or if you want to be technical, USB-C ports. They're not going to really be used on that level as far as like charging or anything. So it's just something to keep in mind with regarding the laptop. My other minor adjustment that, as I've watched and listened to more reviews and more talks about it, is just making sure that when I charge it, there's only one port on the laptop that's intended to charge the laptop. So I have to personally remember that. But it's not really a big adjustment. Like I said, it's a refurb. It's been used, but the amount of use before I got it is not like immense. So I'm not sitting here like, oh my God, I'm getting like a computer that went through a whole lot. And I was able to get some nice some solid applications for free as well. So Logic, Final Cut, Main Stage, Motion, and there's a 5th app that I didn't see, and I thought it might be on here, but if it's not, it wasn't a big deal. But having everything on here that I have, along with the programs that I'm using, and then I'm going to go through and start doing some cleaning of some applications. This is about to really put my effort towards what I need to work on more clear, that it's time to do it, and it's no more excuses. Like it's really time to do it. Like I ain't even just saying it just so I'm talking about it now. I'm saying it because I know now I have the resources to do it, because for the longest time I've constantly been saying, oh, I need this, or oh, it would be good to have this. And I'm like, all right, now I got it. Now what's the next story? And then going into the new role, I've talked about that already. So yeah, just excited about those things. So big things in store, huge plans in the works. And for the next few days, it will probably be me sitting and learning just traditional code, especially C#. A lot of transitions and adjustments have been made with some applications and programs that I'll be doing. So looking forward to that. All right. Pass the message. What do I want to share with you all today? Don't spend as much energy checking in on other people when you need to check in with yourself. A lot of times and a lot of days, our mental health, we treat our mental health like it ain't important. And the truth is, our mental health is a lot more important than we realize. I'm starting with that, and I'm making that an important foundation to this topic because sometimes it goes a very long way when you actually talk to someone and you say, hey, I was thinking about you and I hope you're doing okay. And sometimes the person is going to respond in the most shocked and blindsided way, but they also needed someone to really check on them, but they didn't want to ask to be checked. They would rather they're fine with not being checked on. But sometimes we need people to check on us. We need folks to check us. Even with all of those checks being done, sometimes we got to check ourselves. Sometimes we need to look in our own mirror and look at ourselves and say, am I happy with who I am? Am I happy with where I am? Am I happy with what I'm doing? Could I be doing something better? Am I missing something? Like, what can I add to myself to improve? That's affordable or feasible. Like, those are the different questions and it's obviously there are other questions, but those are like some quick questions that I just kind of thought up in just sitting here talking about it. But checking with yourself, talking with yourself, seeing how you personally are doing for you, not how am I doing making everybody else happy, or how am I doing being available to people? Because let's face it, being available to folks who don't care about your availability is very, very exhausting. And sometimes we don't know it because we're consistently in go mode, just kind of pressing through, making what we got work. And we wonder why the burnout is like calling us. So be more aware with your personal check-ins and taking that time to really check in with you to see how you're doing. And if you're not doing good, acknowledge that you're not doing good and find that way to work through the not doing good part. Like, if we all were doing okay all the time, something's wrong. Like, we're human. As humans, as people, we have feelings. We have to be open and acknowledging our feelings. But we can't let our feelings weigh us down to the point where we're not functionally addressing how we feel with those feelings we're carrying. And that's something that I want more people to improve upon. And that's something that I'm going to work harder to improve upon as I'm saying this to you all on the podcast. And even when I go back and listen to this, checking with you is going to be gold, whether you realize it or not. Checking with others is fine, but sometimes checking with them don't mean nothing if you ain't checking with you. Check in and be sure that you are good, and the rest will kind of come together on its own. Glad I adjusted the volume because now I can definitely see the audio difference, and it's going to be even more noticeable when I hit stop. But that's all I got for y'all. Y'all have an amazing day. Have a positive week, rest of the week. Next week, I don't know how this is going to go because what I'm sensing will probably happen is that the podcast will be shifted politely to Saturdays, which will give you my Saturday routine back, which I haven't had in a while. But we'll see. I don't want to get too far ahead of anything. Like we always say, one day at a time, and just kind of give each day your best. So that's all I got. Until next time, Pat signing out. Peace.
Another episode is completed. Thank you all for listening. If you want to check out the podcast, you can go to buzzsprout.com. If you're looking to do podcasts, you can go to buzzsprout.com. To get to my podcast, you'll go to the pastbtpod.buzzsprout.com. If you're looking at getting a microphone, I always suggest getting the Blue Yeti X. That is the microphone that I use. If you're starting off and you need something more affordable, Samson Meteor, it's a worthwhile investment. And there are other microphones that are going to be simple enough. My big suggestion I tell everyone whenever looking for a microphone, be sure that your microphone has the ability to have you listen to your audio or listen to yourself as you're talking. It will make a big difference in your editing and your podcast. Also, most importantly, and I tell people this is a tip offline, but I'm giving this in the final listen. or at the end of the show. Drink water while recording, and also just drink water in general. But drink water while you're recording, and the reason why, you'll be surprised. All right. See y'all on the next show.